Good evening and welcome to tonight's school board meeting, June 12th. Mr. Amato, could you call roll?
Mr. Chumley.
Present.
Mr. Rudy.
Present.
Mr. Patton.
Present.
3 present. Mrs. Brinkman and Mrs. Delaney informed us they will not be able to meet tonight.
All right. We have reason to go into executive session for the purposes of considering the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee. Do you need a motion for that?
Any motion?
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Second.
Mr. Rudy seconded it. Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
3 yes.
Ms. Peck called it. All right. All right,
Sir.
we'll be back at 7 o'clock. Welcome back to our June 12th school board meeting. Mr. Romano, could you call us back from executive session?
Yes, Mr. Chumley,
Present.
Mr. Patton,
Present.
Mr. Rudy.
Present.
Three present.
Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 4, motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll make a motion. Second.
Mr.
Ryan and
Mr. Patton,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
Three yes.
Item 5, recognition.
We have a donation that we are going to be accepting, or I'm going to ask you to accept tonight. It's 4 pianos, it's a baby grand, a grand piano, and 2 upright pianos that will be delivered to the high school and the middle school, 2 of each. And then we're replacing some of our older pianos. It's a donation that came to us. I'm kind of picking this up from Mike. The person involved lives in Iowa, from what I understand. And as soon as you accept this, then we will get to the delivery of those pianos and find a place for the other pianos to go to. But quite a significant value in these 4 pianos. And as I put in the board report, it's just to continue the legacy of her husband and wanted to donate these to a school district, assuming that she was a member of the community and picked us to donate the 4 pianos.
I will put that on the floor in the form of a motion and ask for a second.
Second.
Mr. Romano?
Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mr. Patton.
Yes.
3 yes.
Item 6, public commentary. Do we have anything? else?
Okay. All right.
Item 7, consent agenda.
You guys are going to hear me a lot tonight. And I really like being back in front of the microphone. So good evening. In front of you is the personnel agenda for June 12, 2023. On the agenda, we have the resignation of 9 teachers, 1 computer technician, 1 full-time paraprofessional, 2 part-time paraprofessionals, 1 cafeteria worker, and 1 recommendation for approval of a resignation agreement. The agenda includes the proposed hiring of 17 teachers, 2 counselors, 2 paraprofessional aides, 1 custodian, 1 cafeteria worker, 13 part-time office assistants, 2 part-time paraprofessional aides. Included also in this agenda are the transfers of Angela Fallhaber from secondary instructional coach to associate principal at West Clermont High School, Kim Reese from grade 4 teacher at Merwin to the dean at Holly Hill, and Heather Robbins from school counselor at West Clermont High School to the dean at West Clermont High School. This agenda also includes the proposed extended days for 2 deans, 2 counselors, 1 gifted intervention specialist, and 1 of our new assistant principals. On this agenda, we have proposed approval supplemental contracts for multiple club advisors, multiple home tutors, multiple coaches for the middle school and the high school. Also included in this agenda is proposed approval for temporary summer workers, requested unpaid leaves of absence, approval of our office assistants to sub in our health clinics, approval of multiple substitutes for our classified positions, multiple school volunteers, and student teachers. Also on this agenda, we have the request to change and approve FTEs by adding 1 full-time intervention specialist for 2023-2024. Finally, in the work beyond the contract section, proposed approval for payments of summer school instructors, teachers working our 3rd grade guarantee camp, special education teacher attending IEP meeting during the summer, secondary health curriculum development, advanced quantitative reasoning learning course, and our wellness champions. This concludes the review of the personnel agenda submission for your consideration.
And just so you all know, Angela Fallhaber is here with us tonight. So she's been in the district. She's presented at our board meetings before, but just in case you need to put a name with a face. Oh, you're up there still, Randy.
Item 7.02, School district to continue membership with the OHS.
Yes, that's in this folder. So we have, each year we have to approve this resolution to be signed by our president as well as our superintendent. And this gives us the right to join OHSAA and compete next year. We'll submit this to OHSAA for their approval before June 30th. I'll have that signed and returned to them this week.
Thank you. Item 7.03, which I think is also your.
So, you have your board policy, or you saw your board policy. This is second reading of the board policy. The board policy is, I know two of you are already on that committee as well, so you understand have gone through this. Now this will be the third time that you have gone through this. We have revisions on there for technical corrections. You have revisions under 2,000 programs, 5,000 students, section 6,000 finances, section 7,000 property, section 8,000 operations, additions for our volunteers, which is our new language as well. We rescinded the old volunteer language. We also have rescinded in relations, areas of telephone communications. I guess we don't use telephones anymore, so that's been rescinded out of there as well. And so we would ask you for approval for the second reading of our board policies.
Thank you. Item 7.04.
I have two items for you this evening. The first is an item to accept a grant to the district from the Clermont County Family and Children First Council. This is a generous donation of $3,000 to assist the district with its efforts in suicidal ideation prevention efforts, largely Hope Squad and other types of activities that we engage in with students and families around that important topic. Additionally, we have the 2023-24 Parent-Student Handbook for your consideration. This has been updated in collaboration with stakeholders throughout the district, and once approved by you, will be included on our district website and distributed to students and families for use. Any questions on those items? Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7.05.
Good evening. This evening, for your approval, we are presenting the 23-24 school fees. I just would like to point out that apart from the preschool tuition, which you approved earlier this year, apart from increasing our tuition costs, all other fees are remaining the same for the 23-24 school year.
Thank you.
Oh, you're still up.
7.07.
Science versus.
All right, hello again. So last board meeting, we brought forth to you our first reading of the science course of study. Per policy, it's something that you have 30 days for approval, or 30 days for review. And so this evening, we're just seeking your official approval of our science course of study.
Mr. LaFatta, are you doing the resolution in lieu of transportation?
I can do it.
Okay, well, then Dan can do it.
I can do it. So annually, there's a request of the Board of Education where it is either not conducive for us to transport students to and from their school of choice. And so there's an avenue to provide funding to the parents in lieu of us providing them transportation. So the resolution has to be approved by the board so that we can contract with those parents to provide that to them. So it is the recommendation of the resolution regarding in lieu of transportation to St. Gertrude School in Madeira, in Cincinnati, Classical Academy in Reading, and some of the parents that have students attending those schools who we would contract for. The rate that we pay is really set by the state of Ohio for those students.
Thank you. And Mr. Parise.
So before you is the High School Tech Intern Pilot 3.0. This is a program that's sponsored by the state of Ohio to expand exposure to technology professions to high school students. So anyone rising into the 9th grade or recently graduated can participate in a summer internship program with companies. Recently, we've had school districts defined as those companies, so we're able to actually keep students in our walls working with us through the summer. So where normally we would have student workers, we have an enhanced program for them this summer where we're doing a lot more training. There's a lot more exposure. We're doing some workshops for them in networking and in systems administration, which we have not done in the past. And the best part is it's mostly sponsored by the state. Actually, it will be fully sponsored by the state.
Okay. Item 7.10 is request for approval of minutes. Those minutes are for the regular meeting that was held on May 22nd. Item 7.11 is request for the approval of donations, and I will read those. As Mr. Gephardt had mentioned earlier, the first one was from Maura Talwani. That was the donation of the various pianos to the high schools and middle school. There was an anonymous donation of $500 to Willowville Elementary to help pay past due lunch balances. Baldy Cares Community Grants donated $250 gift card to Willowville Elementary to purchase items for the program cooking lessons. There was an anonymous donation of two $50 Amazon gift cards to Amelia Elementary for classroom supplies. And Smithfield Meats donated hot dogs for the 5th grade picnic at Amelia Elementary. Item 7.12 is the recommendation to approve the resolution authorizing the superintendent treasurer to execute agreements for district services. The one contract that is listed is for our liability insurance. We do put that up for bid. We do that through a consultant who has several school districts that do that with us. The increase, it actually becomes a renewal because the low bidder was Liberty Mutual, who we had last year. There is, though, an increase in that premium. We were able to reduce the increase a little bit by increasing our deductible, but the recommendation is to improve Liberty Mutual for our liability insurance. Item 7.13 is approval of purpose and budget statements. Some of those are for cleaning up for this school year, 22-23. Those are listed. Item 7.14 is approval of purpose and budget statements for the upcoming school year, 23-24. We try and get those in before that activity starts, so there are numerous ones listed under 7.14. Item 7.15 is request for approval of the financial statements, bills paid lists, and the investments for the period ending May 2023. Various statements and documents are listed under that. And so the consent agenda has 15 items in it, items 7.01 through 7.15. Based on the recommendation of the superintendent, the administrative staff, and myself.
You've heard the recommendations for the consent agenda. Could I ask for a motion?
I was not at that May 22nd meeting, so I cannot vote on that, correct?
No, you can vote on the minutes.
Okay.
Even though you weren't there, you can vote, yes.
Okay.
You're okay.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Any questions? Mr. Amon?
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
3 yes.
Section 8, superintendent's business.
Yes, Mr. Gephardt and Mr. LaFato will come up, well, as well as Mr. Priest, to lead this year's final impact team report for the year. It kind of gives you a status of where we are in our horizon planning efforts, what's to come next. And we will be spending time as a district leadership team, not this week, but next, working with our consultant on all the data that was collected with all the surveys. And so that'll kind of be the next phase of the impact team work, is to see see what we learned from all those surveys and put into motion plans that we can continue to vet with our community. So at this time, I'll just turn over to Mr. Gephardt. Wrong one again.
Thank you.
Is that working? Good evening again. So, been in my new position for 2 weeks now as we roll into this very, very important topic that we're going to be talking about, not only tonight, but till 2030, because you're going to hear about that a lot. And it's going to be putting a plan together and then talk about the current status of our facility, our focus, not only today, but what's going to happen tomorrow as well. And some of the underlying themes that we have, we know we have increased enrollment. We know we have older buildings. We know we're running out of space. And we have to look at our purpose and design of how we deliver education to our students. And so those are the things, the underlying things. But in the past year, the Board of Education has passed their FCC requirement to get in line again to create new facilities and a master plan. Facilities master plan will be more that we'll talk about as we get into the fall, because we'll start to put together a timeline for you as well. We continually have ongoing maintenance of roofs, asphalt, and HVAC systems. You know, we added modulars at Merwin. And I just want to make a note about that. When we do modulars or we start thinking about that, those are a year in advance. And so when you start to consider putting those in for 2024-25, those decisions are made in early fall, if not by November. And so if those are options that we look at, those are something that we would be looking at in the early fall as well. The external safety audit in the fall 2022, all recommendations will be completed by the fall. We'll have updates for you on that. Our facility usage and conditions report from November as well as May of 23, continually ongoing work as we work with that. Obviously working closely with enrollment, technology, purpose and design teams, and our Horizon Future Focused Planning will be part of what's happened in 2023, or 2022, 2023. A lot has been done, and we'll continue to go to our community, to our parents, for feedback on our facilities. And as I get past this next slide, you'll start to see a little bit of red, and you're going to start to see some of the challenges that we have as a district. But one of the things that came out from our REACT survey is what you can see is that when you look at the numbers, it's about 80% feel pretty good, average or above average, about the way we feel about our facilities, which you would think is good. And I think that is a testament to our maintenance department, our custodial staff, for all the hard work that they've done in the aging buildings that we have. So we have a community or parents that believe that we have good facilities. However, when we start to get into the data and we start to look at some of the things that we have to do, we have to decide if we're going to put a Band-Aid on this or if we're going to look at possibility of new construction down the road. And I think that's important. So when you look at the REACT survey, is just the first step of what we'll be doing as we move into the fall, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But we're going to need to really involve our community and ask our parents, what do they want? I mean, that's the most important thing when you start to look at facilities, is what does our community want, what's our parents want, what's best for students. And so as we move forward, this is David presented to you, so we're not going to go a lot into this next graph, but as you can see, our enrollment's going up. So when you look at 2022-23 at 8273, and you look at 27-28 at 9104, is our projected enrollment. So we're going to have more students, and we're running out of space in some of our buildings, and almost all of our buildings. And the only thing I'd highlight there is when you start talking about new construction, when you start to talk about 2025, if that's something that we're going to look at, we're going to need to get community input over the next 12 months, and we'll go more into that timeline. But if new construction comes along, you're looking at 2027-28 of almost 800, 900 more students, which is something we have to prepare for. The next slide shows, again, David put this comparison together of where new construction. As you can see, the new construction, Willowville looks like one of the areas. You're going to see a lot of red in there immediately when we go to the next slide. But these are the new dwellings that will be in this time period up to 2027, 28, and the estimated number of new students. The area of Holly Hill, as you'll see, is a lot of green space, not a lot of construction. And our expectation is that we're going to have more construction in that area as we move forward. So new construction brings students to the area, and so we, again, have to look at the enrollment as we move forward. The next slide, again, is a slide you've seen before. It kind of gives you an indication of the space and the challenges that we have moving forward. Obviously, the red are areas that were of concern. As I said before, Willowville, as you saw the new construction, is one of the high areas of new construction, and we're already there at capacity. It's already a red area. And so you're going to start to see that as we move along, we're going to have capacity issues.
Well, and what I'll mention there, just sorry to interrupt, but just what's specific about Willowville is that a few years ago, we made the decision at both Holly Hill and Willowville to consolidate our preschools and put them there. So Willowville isn't at capacity because of general education. They're at capacity because we have half of our school district's preschool is there. And so that's one of the key takeaways from tonight is like preschool is a pressure point area. It's continuing to grow. As you know, we've been adding teachers every year since I've been here to the preschool population. And we thought it was most effective and efficient to put them in two locations. And Willowville was built oversized, and there was room at Holly Hill. So that's why we chose those two, so that we had opportunities at both sides of the district. And so that's going to be, preschool is going to be a topic we're going to have to continue to face as we look at the long-term plan. Do we want to stay with a preschool that is divided in half and continue to plan around it? Do we want to put preschool everywhere? As you know, there are requirements that comes with preschool, mandated, specific, how we toilet and the restrooms and where they're located and all this. So there are financial ramifications to any changes we would make to the plan.
So again, if I can interrupt,
Yes.
this would be also a discussion if we wanted to build a school primarily for preschool.
Yes.
So like,
Yes, and so
Fine.
that would be like one of those discussions is, do we want, some school districts do an early learning center, so where they have pre-K, K1, 2, all inside of one facility. Do we want to combine it like that? Do we want to sprinkle it throughout the district and preschool be at every single elementary? What would be the ramifications of that? So those are the
Okay.
kinds of, the brainstorming we'll need to do and the pricing out what makes the most sense and what's going to be the most effective or efficient. Because the numbers are growing.
Also, you can see the pictures on there. That's Merwin. You utilize as much space as possible. You've got art on a cart on one side. You've got looks like PE on another side, and then you've got class on the stage. And that's typical what you're going to see in some of our buildings.
Yeah, and if you read that smaller print, like that really is the point. I mean, there's room in these buildings, but it starts to restrict the kinds of learning you can do in there. So when we talk about purpose and design, if school is supposed to be for things like specials, do we want to settle for specials on a cart and get by, or should there be specific rooms that are designed for the elementary specials that provide the access to water or, the kinds of flooring or lighting or whatever you need in the spaces to make it conducive? Or in the music areas, having the soundproof rooms built in for when they do instruments or whatever. Those are decisions. Like right now, we make do by making the teachers travel. Art on a cart is, a phrase you've probably heard before. And that's not, unheard of in districts. It's just, what is it that we want? And the one that really stands out the most is the picture that you see there. And sometimes that's Merwin, and it's the hardest to make out. But if you're standing in the room, this is what's happening. Lunch is happening on one side of that screen. On the other side of the screen, PE. On the other side of that screen is a stage, and so that's where music was. We've made some modifications. This picture is from 2 years ago, but 2 years ago there were 3 things happening simultaneously that certainly kind of contradict each other's purpose a bit. And then you add to it, there are 4 bathrooms right there on the side walls. those are the only bathrooms for the kids to access. And so in addition to the activity with lunch, the activity with PE, and the activity with music, you have kids going in and out of the bathroom there all day. And so it's not as functionally appropriate for what elementary needs nowadays as maybe one day it did serve a purpose, and today now we're really challenged. So they've made some modifications, and now classrooms are being converted as cafeteria. And so what that does is it causes you need staff in the cafeteria, and you need staff in another room just to spread it out and make things more conducive. So it adds a human capital issue as you look at some of this. So I just wanted to pause and kind of point those things out. And what we wanted to be more in a work session kind of situation today, so there would be more conversational, but we changed it since it was just a few of us. So feel free to jump in with any questions, because we want to be able to dialogue about this, because it's a lot of information to consume, and probably if you have a question, people in our community have the same one.
So moving on to the school district facility age and capacity, I just wanted to put that on one slide for you to take a look at, so you can compare with our three older buildings compared to our newer buildings. And we're saying newer buildings from 2010 and beyond. So that's already getting to that age. The high school is already going to be 7 years old next year. Hard to believe that we're already going to be looking at 7 years, as this feels like we just opened the doors of West Clermont High School. And so it kind of gives you the projected enrollment and those that will be over capacity. I'll just highlight West Clermont High School. Now, it does say over capacity, but that does not include, those are the numbers, but then we have students that leave for Great Oaks, we have CBL students, we have students that are full-time college credit plus, so that doesn't mean that all those bodies are going to be in the high school. And we also have those extra spaces that we can convert into classrooms, those extended learning areas that you saw on the first, second, third floor. Those can be converted into learning spaces as well. So not as much fear at West Clermont High School, because we do have some areas that we can move into. But that kind of gives you an idea of our three older buildings. And I'm going to bring Chuck up now to talk about those. As we move forward, we'll go through the good buildings, but those have challenges as well. And we're not going to go through every one of them, but it's also going to take a look at kind of what we have, what Chuck's department works with, and some of the concerns and challenges that we have moving forward.
Natasha, while he's
Yes.
coming up, it might be more for Dan. When we
Okay.
talk about buildings, there's a different, is it capital improvement? That's where this money would come from versus
Yes.
our operational, but, like, could you explain that just a little bit?
That is the intent. So when you talk about facilities, you talk about equipment or things with a longer-term life, you typically want to take that out of your permanent improvement fund if you're doing improvements to that, okay? If you're doing new facilities or additional construction, add-ons to a building, typically that is with a bond issue for those constructions to do that. One of the benefits that we have, and I looked at the facility audit coming up next, is with the buildings that were under the it's OFSC when I did them, but OFCC, correct, right now. The Ohio Facilities Commission there's $500,000 that's dedicated to maintain those buildings. And the way we are addressing that is 1/2 of that $500,000 we're setting aside for longer term, higher cost items like roofs, HVAC, any type of outer exterior construction that may be needed. And then the other half is being used currently for maintenance items that we may need in those buildings. To answer your question properly, the trick is to avoid using current operating funds for those facilities.
Because certainly that money cannot be used for like staffing and for salaries. That-
Correct.
Right, it has a
cannot be used.
designation. Well, and one thing also to point out, and you can correct me if I'm misspeaking, but when we have money set aside in PI, it's right now being used for Merwin for those modulars.
Correct,
And so whenever that happens, go ahead.
So in our permanent improvement fund right now, there's our inside millage was dedicated to the permanent improvement fund, so that's gonna be ongoing. But the two major things that is covering right now is, one, it is paying for the debt for the high school. Okay, it was dedicated for that, along with some of the TIF money that can be raised. And then the second part of it is for your major improvements, like when we added the modulars last year, to Merwin.
Okay.
Do that. I will tell you, though, that that fund, as we discussed in the past, is very tight. So the last several years, there was just really enough money in that fund to pay the debt. 3 years ago, we had to transfer operating money to the PI fund to help pay that debt. There's enough in it to cover it now going forward, but very little, if there was an emergency, very little funds for, to cover an emergency.
Okay.
And that's why, before Chuck speaks, in this chart here, we'll be coming back in October. David has been able to mitigate some of these issues through getting art on a cart. We've shifted some special education classrooms to maybe a building where there was more room. We were able to also, from the inside of the district, the transfers, he was able to kind of balance some schools for people who wanted to do a building-to-building transfer, so that's how he's been able to mitigate. And that's why we haven't added any more modulars at this time, but you can see from this chart, looking at Clough Pike and Amelia and WT, they would definitely be places where we would be considering making those changes.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Evening. What, the part of the report I'm gonna give to you was put together over this, really the past year and a half. The data that was collected was based upon principals, interviews and walking your buildings, and also professional assessments by architects and professionals in the field of roofing and plumbing and HVAC. So I tried to make the data as up to date as possible. I mean, things are changing all the time. I also have Mark Hall here. He's going to give some specific examples of some of the older buildings, what maintenance has faced over the past 16 years. And then Brian Howard from Peterman is here. As part of the report is based on transportation, so in case you would have questions for transportation, Brian can answer those. So I'm not going to go into detail. I think you have this for all the buildings, but I'll give you some highlights. So Amelia, they do have one open classroom for 23-24, but a problem out there is their emergency generator. The building was built in 2010, and the emergency generator will need some rebuilding this year to the tune probably of $30,000 to $40,000. Bearings, when they don't get used, then things wear out essentially. So we'll have to put money in that over the next fiscal year. Then Clough Pike, Mrs. Adams already spoke to and Randy to the overcrowdedness there. Just a couple of highlights. Music is on the stage all day during lunch. The music room is currently used as special education. Child Focus is on a cart and in a small storage closet. Speech is in the media center. And a particularly annoying problem since the building was remodeled is humidity levels continue to be significantly higher. There's an overhead unit that was put in new. We changed it one time. There's still problems. So Terry, our maintenance HVAC professional, as well as Bachman and Elite Air have been there. They're going back Wednesday to run another test on it. It continues to go in alarm. Ed Dyer's fully aware, and Ed has not closed out the UFCC projects in part due to the ongoing problem at Clough Pike. I was there Friday with Kevin. Humidity levels seem to be okay. However, on all of the vents, air handler vents in the, not all, but many of the rooms, there's black dirt or mold appearing around the vents inside the classroom. Not mold, but mildew. So they're going to have to be cleaned, and that's it happened last year. It's happening again. So there's problems in that building. Next is Summerside. Well, technical problem here. One more.
Can I ask you a question here?
Pointing in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And
Jim
Clough-
has a question.
And Clough,
Yes, sir.
where do the teachers eat if they don't have a room? Do they eat in their classrooms?
Jim, I'm really not sure.
Just-
There's no cafeterias for them.
You know.
not the kids themselves? or
No, the teachers.
Teachers are in the old, nurses station, back in the little hallway.
Oh, okay. So they do have a room.
No, that's the clinic.
Is that
That's the clinic, that's currently by bathrooms.
back in the first hallway? Did they change it? Yeah, they were back in that little hallway.
So that's how fluid things are in that building. Changes.
Changed daily.
Well, and we talk about purpose and design of school, and he's saying, you know, the OT, PT, they're not having space, child focus. So when you look at offering services that help with mental health and significant needs, as our population grows, as the needs grow, you need unique spaces for them, and so they're making do. But if you'll remember, when we renovated Clough, it didn't add any classroom except for it added a gym, so that Clough didn't have the problem that Merwin did, which was eating in the same place PE was supposed to take place. And a few years ago, that wasn't as big of a deal because we didn't have specials at the capacity that we have now. We have specials 4 days a week. And so that has to happen simultaneous while people are eating. And so that's why it's a challenge. So no new rooms got added into the Clough project. So it's very, very tight there, and especially as our special education services grow. Ryan, were you thinking of something else?
No,
Okay.
but thank you.
All right, so we'll keep knocking
Well,
down your challenge
as we
list.
go through this, in the red highlighted area, it's much the same in every building. The really crunches with wraparound services and electives or specials. So all the buildings are near capacity or over. So those, as you see, all of those are pushed into other areas or combined. So it's much the same with Summerside. All the rooms are occupied. OT, PT is a very small space. 2 intervention specialists share a room, and there's no adaptive playground equipment. And a particularly problematic thing is the tile on the second floor is separating. It's the second time it's done this, I've been told. So again, that's an OFCC problem and another reason why the whole project hasn't been closed out. Willowville, much the same. ESL has 14 students, and they meet in a common space outside of the rooms. There's 49 open parking spaces. However, because of the preschool, they fill up quickly, and so what Kevin has had to do is park 18 of his teachers behind the building, and particularly in fire lanes. It's not a problem. The fire department understands. We've not been cited for it. That alleviates his problem in the front of the building, but still he's parking 18 teachers not in designated parking spots. WT, again, art on a cart. Scrolling on down, ESL, 50 students are in a very tight internal space within a classroom. They rotate. Reading specialists meet in a very small space within a classroom again. All classrooms are used, classes are shared for other instruction and wraparound services. Discoveries in the media center. So again, it's a common theme. The high school, while it's just 7 years old and large, there are some problems. Parking lot, gates were added that has alleviated some of the parking problems and traffic problems. However, this year we had an internal bladder and a boiler begin to leak, could not be repaired. That's a 7-year-old piece of equipment. The bladder failed, and to the tune of $25,000 to fix it. And then you all know we had frozen pipes this winter over Christmas. That was a $46,000 insurance claim. And there's the impending replacement of field turf outside, and then the immediate need for turf inside I guess it's 2 years old now, the field house. And then technology issues, which Larry will speak to. Holly Hill is, again, one of the older buildings, and again, they have internal problems with usage. Art and Discovery are sharing a room. Two psychs are sharing a room, again, just like WT, OT, PT. They're sharing a room, which includes the motor room. Classroom is being used for music. There's no really separate music room. Child Focus is in tech closet, fairly large closet, but it's still a closet. Speech is in an office in the near the media center. 2 reading specialists are sharing a room, et cetera, et cetera. A problem with Holly Hill are the windows. The windows are in they're original windows. So we're going to have to start replacing them in sections. The quote for the rear section was, we got 3 quotes. They were all between $50,000 and $58,000. That's replacing them with vinyl clad windows. Really not upscale windows, but it would serve the purpose for the life of that building. So we'll probably start that project this fall or next summer. Backup generator is in place, but it can't be fixed. It's old. They don't make the parts for it anymore. So to have a backup generator, it's brand new generators, $400,000 on the rim and out the door with installation. Merwin is, we've been over this, of course, with the modular units, but there's a pretty good list of pinch points or challenges in that building. Mrs. Adams spoke probably of the worst as far as students and teachers go, and that's that cafeteria, which is used for multiple spaces. Chester and administrators in the building do an amazing transformation within a few minutes, really, with going into lunch, during lunch, and then out of lunch to get kids and teachers in and out of there. The asphalt, which I'll mention here in a few minutes, is particularly problematic at Merwin. There are wraparound services sharing various parts of the building. The furniture in Merwin dates back to the 80s. It's in poor condition at best. We have replaced a couple partial classrooms since I've had this position. The middle school is, when you talk about money and problems, the middle school probably is leading the parade. There's a very long list. Again, I'm not going to read it, but it's the same story as the other buildings. Multiple use, closets, classrooms, constantly changing. Mark is doing a project out there for their calming room to add a door into the hallway. They had no calming room. We bought mats for them last year, and Mark expanded the room. Now they need a door for safety reasons to go out into the hall. So it's an ever-evolving change in the middle school. Furniture, again, is in very poor condition. It's 80s at best. The space overall in the building is a problem. The roofing costs, which are significant on this page, I'll allude to it again shortly, but since 2019, the district has spent $1.1 million on replacing roofs, and they're not done yet. There's still 9 sections, which I'll go over here in a minute. There's a restroom in the back of the building Mark will talk about. You really can't use it as a faculty restroom. I'll let him go into details, but it's historic and it's problems. So overall, before I move on to the cost section, really 2 essential questions for the board and for the community. What is the best purpose and design for a modern school in West Clermont? That's a decision that it's going to be talked about within the next year, 2 years, and it's a decision everyone, the community and the school board are going to have to come to grips with. And then secondly, how will West Clermont address the inequity and inadequacies of the learning environments that we're faced with? Even in the newer buildings, as you see, they're out of space. And Mrs. Adams is correct. If all schools have specials or electives, but what do you want those to be? Do you want to have art on the car, or do you want to have an art room? That's a decision we're going to have to come to grips with in the future.
Well, and before you move on, let me just make a couple points. One of the challenges that we face is understanding all this. I'll use an example. This weekend, I was at a graduation party, and I had several people come up to me and say, I just spent the whole weekend in your district, and your facilities are amazing. And I can't think of a week that I go by in this role where people aren't commenting on our amazing state-of-the-art facilities. And so to know that and to make that be a weekly part of conversation that I have out in the community, and then to hear what Chuck just said, it's confusing. So we don't have billboards up that say, hey, the bathroom at the middle school doesn't work for people. And we don't have billboards up that say, the teachers at Clough don't have a place to eat. Our building leaders and our maintenance and custodial team and all of our administrators work together to like make the best of it. But we're at a point where making the best of it is really stretching in ways that we can. And let me just give an example. While our problems are so complex, and when we talk about the 5 challenges that we've been talking about at our town halls, the complication, when you look at, let's just go with this Clough one as an example. So teachers don't have a specific place to eat. So, well, everyone's like, well, just eat in your classroom, like sit there and eat. There's no kids in there, sit there and eat. Okay, that might be an answer, but then it could cause other problems. For example, what if teacher X is having a peanut butter sandwich that day, and somebody in that classroom has a peanut allergy? So we're talking about well-being of students now. And so, certain special precautions have to be made when you need a peanut-free zone, and we need classrooms to be safe places for students. And so something as small as, yeah, just eat at your desk could have this ripple effect. And additionally, I'll use art on a cart as an example. We know that there's a workforce shortage. We know that our staff is being heavily recruited because they know we have a talented staff, and school districts all around us are challenged with the same topics. So they're recruiting, looking for teachers. Might someone who's on a cart in one district it might be appealing to have a classroom where there's no movement in another district. And so working conditions are a part of this. And so there's safety and well-being issues, working conditions, and all these ideas, purpose and design, safety and well-being, educational programming, and our facilities, they all start to intersect. And that's why there's no like, let's just check a box and there's a quick fix. All these issues have to be looked at simultaneously and figure out like, what is the gateway actions that we can take that will mitigate and take care of a lot of things at once. And so that's why these conversations are so vital. And it's complicated for us in our school district when you have such amazing facilities at the same time. We have some real gaps in some of our other ones. And you have to get to the point where you're saying, okay, we keep putting very good money into a situation. How long, how big is this Band-Aid? Is this even a cast? Is this strong enough to last us, or is this just getting us by? And when does it start to not to make any sense to be investing money in some of these spaces? And so that's really why we're here.
I think, let me add to that, I think an unspoken story here is, it's with the principals, and Ellie knows it with teaching and learning, and Randy as a principal, and me as a former principal. When you do master schedule, you want to do what's right for students and teachers. And so if you have a high demand for music, art, discovery, you want to try and facilitate that, but then you're out of classrooms. So now you're scrambling, you're looking for closets, or you're looking for stages, anything. So that's sad. It really is sad. And you're in a 10-year-old building and you're thinking, I got discovery in a closet, come on. So that's a problem that doesn't show in this data, but the principals make it work because they bust their tails over doing these master schedules. So when you walk in, or the community walks in, they see kids going where they should go. Building's quiet, safe, everything looks hunky-dory. Well, it's not, because the principals have made it work for that particular school year, or even for that particular semester. Well, one other thing to tag on what Mrs. Adams is saying, when I was a principal at Reading, we had a lot of open classrooms. I would continually raid Lakota and Milford because their specials were on a cart. All of their specials were on a cart. Even Milford had phys ed. So I got 2 phys ed teachers, I just called them. 2 phys ed teachers from Milford stolen because we could offer them not only a nice gym, but 2 offices. So it's that kind of competition we're in. So people are cherry picking our teachers because hey, you're on art cart in Merwin, come to our school, you'll have an art room. So that's what we're doing, that's reality. All right, let me move on. I got the next 3 slides are asphalt roofing and HVAC. So asphalt is a problem with the 3 older buildings. Middle School, Merwin, Holly Hill. Halk Asphalt and one other asphalt company did an assessment, and all of those parking lots that are very high risk of failing, needing completely new asphalt. And if you go to Merwin, you can see what we're talking about. They can only be sealed and striped so many times. So in some cases in Merwin, it's down to the base, the starting surface. It's just all crumbling. So they call it spider webbing and it's all coming up, especially when they run plows over it, which Mark will talk about. So what we're gonna do at Merwin this year is, it was just sealed and restriped 2 years ago, so this year, Houck Asphalt is going to do spot repairs. And then they're gonna be on call all year. If we have another pothole open up, whatever, we'll call him and he'll come out. So they're gonna kind of build that into the cost. The middle school, same deal. There's 3 lots out there. To total replace all of them is $583,000 and some change. Lance started a rotation. It's a 6-year rotation where parking lots are sealed and striped. So we're meeting those obligations. We're staying on that schedule. It goes to 2027, then we'll start again. But these lots they're deteriorating faster than we can continue to reseal them. The middle school has one pretty good lot. It's a side lot where not a lot of people park. It's off the side of the pack. But the other lots at the middle school are deteriorating rapidly and will need some extensive repairs probably in the next year and a half. Merwin, the cost to replace Merwin is $133,000. We just had it resealed for $11,000. And of all the parking lots on here, Merwin is in danger of needing a whole lot real soon. Having the construction over there this past year with the modulars didn't help at all, because we had heavy equipment going in and out of there for a week, and it really chewed it up. All right, roofing assessment. I brought this to you, I don't know, a few board meetings ago. We had Elevar Architects assess all of our roof with infrared imaging. So here are some of the highlights. Holly Hill is at the end of its service life, but however, when Holly Hill was built, they put a rubber roof on there, so that really is a good thing. We can continue patching it and extend the life of that roof and not be in any significant danger. Now, as soon as I say that, something's gonna happen this winter and you're gonna say, what were you talking about? It just fell in. Well, hopefully with being proactive, we can keep that roof intact. Merwin, that roof is original in many places, and it is absolutely at the end of its life. Elevar, the recommendation is replace it like tomorrow. It's that bad. So the total replacement is $1.6 million. Now, what we are going to do this year is patch and repair in various spots that have been identified as the worst of the worst. However, we're throwing pretty good money after bad doing that, because it's only going to be a matter of time before there's a major failure on that roof. Middle school, I mentioned to you, we spent $1.1 million since 2019. There's 9 sections now are at the end of their service life, 2 of which are going to be replaced this summer to the tune of $384,000. They're off to the side and near the pack. So that means we'll have 7 more sections to address on that roof. Those 7 sections are at the end of their life too. So we'll have to constantly monitor them, just like we're doing at Merwin.
So Chuck, when we're talking about these things, we also, again, big picture is we need to decide, do we fix the roof? Do we do a new building? Am I hearing all this? Okay, so again, you're just throwing out all these options, so we can fix the roof, but that still doesn't fix the problem of the size of the building. So then
Right.
are we throwing good money
Yeah.
away, basically?
That's basically the crux of the matter
Right,
here.
okay.
The conundrum is, I'm just giving you the data.
Yeah,
Up-to-date
no, I
data.
appreciate
And then
that.
It's some heavy-duty decision-making is gonna have to come on behind. All right, HVAC is, I know I mentioned this to you last winter. We hired a local HVAC company to do preventive maintenance on all of our HVAC units, because Terry could not keep up with it, and they're all aging units. So here's the problem. Merwin has 19 HVAC units. 4 of them are at risk of failure. Merwin also has window units. To replace those is between $300 and $500. The window units were put in 2017. Mark probably installed them. We have the high-risk units range in replacement costs from $4,800 to $302,000. This would be for boilers or larger air handler units. The newer wing at Merwin has had new controls put in last year. That was $28,000. That's just one wing. The other wing will have to be updated. Middle school has 27 units, ranging in age from 51 years old to 23 years old. This is a disaster. They all are at high risk of failure based upon professional assessments. There's 6 boilers. 5 were upgraded in 1998, which is not too recent. 1 boiler in the pack was patched this year. The HVAC can't get parts for it. It's a 1997 boiler, so they had a brilliant idea. You know how you used to put radiator patch in your radiators when it was leaking? So that's what they did, and it stopped the leak. How long that lasts, who knows? But it cost $1,500 to do that. Holly Hill, the building is 13 units ranging in age from 42 to 25. 3 units are at moderate risk of failure and 10 are at high risk. The 2 boilers are original, however, they have been updated. Cost of replacements anywhere from $5,600 to $195,000. So what I want to do now is get Mark up here, and he can talk to you in more specific terms about some 16 years here of things that he's seeing and will continue to see.
Thanks for having me. I'd like to start with Holly Hill, even though it's not got a lot going on, but the expense of the windows. So the windows in there are wood inner with a vinyl clad outer. Well, they've deteriorated so bad that we're trying to replace chunks of wood in it. So eventually those things are just gonna, I don't even know if they'd fall out, but they're in really bad shape. So that's kind of something that we really need to look at. And though I know 1 wing was $57,000 or something, but it's probably going to be close to $250,000 once it's all said and done for that, just the windows themselves. So in the water system, the hot water heater, it's Donnie Blankenship's been over there patching and patching and patching and patching some stuff that's, you know, that's Donnie. He's the magic man when it comes to that. So that's the biggest hit for a Holly Hill issue. Merwin, we have one of the big issues that I think that we need to really look at is one of the boilers is 10 years old, one's original. And the issue that we had the 1 year was it just went out, dead of winter. So that's another thing that we need to look at is it's not if it's going to go out, it's when it's going to go out. And then when you have another issue from a maintenance standpoint is the switch gear. So all your power comes in from Duke into a switch gear. Switch gear hits every different panel throughout the district or the building. I'm sorry. They're starting to fail. So that's where, from an electrical standpoint, it can go out and it can be down for days, maybe even weeks. So you'll have an issue that pops up to where you may have a whole wing dead that you can't fire up because you'll have to run overhead, bring a company in to bring the big stuff in. But that's kind of one of our big issues that we've been facing a little bit at a time. And it's all old and we're scared that it's going to just crap out on us. Merwin, or the middle school, that's a whole different issue. The middle school, we actually took one of our maintenance guys to put over there full-time. He's there 24/7 doing work orders. It's one of our highest work order buildings in the district. It also has the electric panels in that whole building is all extremely old. You can't find breakers for them anymore. So once those start going, and there's approximately 20 of those panels in that building, that's going to end up being a major issue for us and quite costly at that. The plumbing issue is in the back hallway for the teacher's lounge. the pipe has settled in the hallway. It's down about 6 inches, and it's about 5 feet deep. And what's happening is when they flush the toilet, you know, whatever will get stuck in that belly, and we literally auger that every single day while it's open. It just gets clogged up, backs up in the classroom, because the way the drains are set up in that building is there's floor drains in 2 of the classrooms. So out of the blue, if they flush a toilet, all of a sudden in the classroom with kids in there, you got a cesspool. And it happens almost every single day. So we had to shut it down because it's just become just a health issue, really. So that's one of the big issues there. The other thing is, in that building is we put all the window units in all at the same time, and they're starting to fail. And I think there's 60 units in that building, window units, because it's all, you know, it doesn't have central air. So those are kind of some of the big things that we deal with on a daily basis. The plumbing, Donnie's patched, I don't know how many water lines in that building where it just pops a leak. The other issue is we've started to lose underground electric, which there'll be a panel that goes underground. It's in conduit. The concrete is eventually rotted the conduit, and it blows it, and the only way we can do is reroute it. And those are starting to pick up pace on when they do that. So that could be a majorly cost issue. So.
One of the reasons we wanted to have Mark come here is because he knows these buildings inside and out, and the team that he leads they're very talented, and they've been able to do a lot to carry us up very far away. But the things that they're talking about now, it's what you can't see with your eyes. That can be very, very expensive.
Yes, and that's what the issues is with us is, you know, we got to have school. So when we have an issue, like we lost underground coming from the north building to the south building 2 years ago. So the guys came in over the weekend. We had, I forget what electric company, they came in and had to pull all new electric, and, you know, that's slowly just going to start taking off, and then we're going to have some major issues with that, besides the boiler. The boilers are, you know, once they go, who knows when we can replace them. So, you know, we may have some downtime with some schooling, you know, because of that issue. Because it's never going to go out when we're on vacation. It's always going to go out in the heat of the moment, so.
Do you guys have any questions for them about any of these details? I know it's a lot of information, and that's why it's so important that we spend time over the course of the next year just informing everybody, because we do work so hard to keep school running, to make things go very smoothly. We're getting to the point, though, those efforts.
Yeah, I got a couple other things for middle school. It's
Oh,
probably going to
I'm
be
so
major.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I thought you were finished.
They just came to me. Out at the fields, out at the football field, the underground water is starting to blow. So Donnie had just replaced, him and Terry had just replaced a section of the main water line that goes back to the football field. And another issue we always have, it comes up once the company comes in and assesses all the equipment, the sport equipment, is the bleachers. The bleachers are made out of angle iron. So we have a company come in periodically and have to re-weld legs back on this thing, because it's nothing but angle iron, and it's all rusted. So this is going to become an issue over time. So just keep that in the back of your minds. It's been like that for a while. We've jacked up the stands and put new wood under it. We've done a lot to that to just keep putting the Band-Aid on it. But that's going to be a costly issue. So
Thank you.
that's it.
I will say, Mark, on a side note, I do appreciate what your guys' teams and Chuck LaFotta's team has done to keep putting Band-Aids on the mess. So I definitely appreciate your guys' efforts on keeping us up and running.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you.
The purpose of this wasn't gloom and doom. The purpose is just, as I said before, is just to give you the facts. So this is a year and a half in the making of the data that you're hearing tonight. And with the help of the principals and Mark, to gather all this for this meeting was something we really had to do in order to get information to you, help you make decisions in the future. Next part of the report is Peterman Bus Transportation Plan. Brian Howard is here, as I said earlier. Really, the transportation plan for this year has not changed from last year. It's the same plan, although you remember last year we did an extensive study with the CAC on starting time at the middle school. It didn't work. It could have worked, but it didn't work because of cost, and it's not something that's out of the question. It's still looming out there. So do you have any questions for Mr. Howard with Peterman? Okay, the last thing I have, well, this is transportation too, I'm sorry. The essential transportation questions, again, there's two. We changed the middle school start time and adjust the rest of the district according to the future or into the future. That's a looming question that has to be addressed because we have, I think, still the earliest start time of any middle school in Ohio. That's quite a distinction, probably one that we shouldn't have. And then secondly, will we ever provide high school transportation moving into the future? So two questions. And then lastly, I'm out of order here. Oh, no, lastly, I gave you my summation was why we did this report. Now, here's the other thing, last for me, is this report is a living report. What you have, Randy, the genius of Randy Gebhardt, he put like a 6-page report that Mike and I did into 1 or 2 pages. It's awesome. So we'll keep adding to that. So essentially, I don't want to give a report each month, but essentially we could if we had new information for you. All right, thank you. Any questions? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
No?
So I wanted to come up and give you some information on our technology plant, the footprints in each building that we have, talk about some of the same facts that Mr. LaFata, Mr. Gebhardt have been talking about. It's interesting that it seems like the high school opened yesterday, and next year we have to look at replacing the wireless in there. The network, the computer network in that building will be 7 years old by that time, which is the generally expected life expectancy of a computer network. If we don't keep our networks up to speed, we won't be able to stay up with the client devices that are coming out, and then we won't be able to provide the performance levels that we've been able to provide to our students and our staff over the last 6 years currently. So as you see before you, the major systems refresh cycle slide basically shows you some of the primary systems that we consider in the technology department. There's the data network, which includes wired and wireless networking, traditionally a 7-year replacement cycle. Staff devices, which are generally a 4 to 5 year replacement cycle. We try to stay on 4, but we've been lucky with some equipment that has had some very low repair rates, and they still have very solid performance. So we've been able to squeeze an extra year out of those. Using the data that's available to us. The classroom tech, now classroom tech, generally you want to try and keep up with advances in curriculum, and so just about every 7 years, that's the projectors, the smart boards, the document cameras, those kinds of things, enhanced audio and those types of things. Video surveillance systems, obviously we are right now in the middle of a video surveillance update, which is going very well. It's gotten off to a great start here in June, and we're moving very rapidly. And door security, so your access controls, card readers, and those kinds of things. Those are some of our major technology systems that we consider. Of course, there's cybersecurity and those kinds of efforts, but those are much more practice and software-driven, not as much hardware-driven. But that's something to consider as well. So as you look at the slide, you'll see from a data network perspective, that the high school is really our oldest network in the district currently, which is great news, but again, it's starting to age out. So it's a rolling progression of replacement. When you look at the high school, if we are to replace it next year, then you'll see that the middle school and WT and AE are just 1 year behind that. So we would be looking at the summer of '25 to do those 3 buildings. And as you can see, the installation dates on the other buildings show that those will roll year over year as we progress. Staff devices, again, that's something that we try to stay ahead of so that our staff have the tools that they need to do the job, and you can see the ages there as well. The really big concern, I think, is our classroom tech. In many cases, our classroom technology is 10 years old. The first smart board started going into the district in 2013. So you'll see Amelia and WT. Now this predates me a little bit, so some of these numbers are anecdotal based on talking with other individuals who were with the district at that time. But you'll see that we've been keeping those alive. The smart boards, projectors, we've done projector updates to put new projectors in place and try and reconstitute the images in those classrooms. We regularly replace bulbs as they start to age. But as a projector ages, it never returns back to 100% of its capability. So it continues to diminish and diminish over its life cycle. If we leave it too long, it really becomes unusable in the classroom. Lights turned off, shades pulled, and people are still kind of squinting to see the board. So we really need to keep up with those. Obviously, we have a typo for Clough Pike Elementary, but the 3 elementaries that were recently built or remodeled are in the best shape, but the middle school, AE, WT, Holly Hill, Merwin are all aged out, and we have to make some very hard decisions about what we're going to do in those classrooms. To redo classroom tech, the displays, the audio, document cameras, those kinds of things, we could be looking at $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 per classroom, and we have nearly 500 classrooms in the district. So to do the easy math, right? So we're talking about a very large amount of money that we're going to have to invest. And so when we start thinking about some of the other buildings, we have to really consider what that means. Something that Mr. LaFatta, I was taking notes actually as Chuck was talking, because it occurred to me along the way. Some of the challenges they're having with electrical and what have you are the same kind of challenges we're going to have with technology. It's not just that the stuff has to be replaced. With technology, we're used to this really rapid replacement cycle, 4 years, 5 years, 7 years, 8 years. But trying to do those replacements in a building like the middle school is far more costly than doing it in a newer building like AE or WT. In the middle school, you have different elevations. They were built in different phases. The wall thicknesses, the ceiling heights, all of that make it a much more difficult proposition to run new network cabling from one end to the other, to get out into all those classrooms. We're experiencing a situation right now where we're trying to pull one line back from the north gym to be able to feed a new office that's in that hallway because we can't see how to run a cable. I'm not saying it can't be done, but we can't see how to run a cable through the ceilings without dropping down where you can actually see it in the hallway to a new office that's in that north hallway right by the gym. So we're actually looking to pull other cable back because the hard ceilings, we lose it up in the ceiling. So it becomes a difficulty. At the same time, we're tracing the telephone line back to the elevator over by the PAC. And we couldn't trace the phone line back to the phone block because of the hard ceilings and what have you. We lost it in the overhead and we couldn't tell what went where. So we're gonna have to run a new one instead of trying to repair that line because we simply can't tell which end is which, right? And the abandoned cabling in those ceilings is crazy. The amount of abandoned cabling over upgrades throughout the years. So that becomes very difficult. The video surveillance systems, as we said, we're really moving forward very well. The middle school still has about half of the building with older cameras. That's not part of this update because they're serviceable and they're working. But those, again, were put in somewhere in the 2013 to 2015 range. So they're not going to be good for long. Half that building will probably need new cameras in the next 2 years or so. And then the door security, we're doing well with door security, but some of the door security that we had installed with the new high school, and then we've used that same system in other buildings over the last 7 years, 6 years, 7 years, that particular product has been giving us some trouble with failed hardware. And so we fought through the warranty periods. Now they're not under warranty. Now we're sourcing hardware, and door security hardware can take us 4, 5, 6 months to locate, which means we're trying to steal from less critical locations to service other locations, pull off of this door to make sure that the kindergartners can come in after they get done with recess and those kinds of things. So. You'll see the technology 3-year overview. This is sort of the things that we have planned just in the next 3 years. The video surveillance update is underway now. Our phone servers will need to be updated. We're working on that plan. We're planning that out. That money was budgeted for this coming year. So those will need to be replaced. They are currently 6 going on 7 years old. We are working on technology pilots with teaching and learning. The tighter integration between technology and teaching and learning that we've been able to develop are allowing us to support their courses of study and trying to provide technology that meets their need and supports the new curriculum that they're putting forward. Distributed antenna systems. The distributed antenna system is a system that allows first responder radios to work inside of our buildings and reach, I see Mr. Patton nodding his head, and reach their call center, their command center. In the high school, that system is now basically obsolete. It's reached end of life. The parts are not available. We have to replace that system. I've been working with Mr. Romano, and he's done a great job to show us how we can make that happen. We've also applied for grants for that, so we're waiting. We'll know in September, October if the grants come through to allow us to do that with grant funding. 75% of it done with grant funding. Rest would be permanent improvement funds. And then AE and WT need some enhancements as well. Their systems were put in as a retrofit after the buildings were built, and so they need to be enhanced a bit. That all came from our safety audit that was done in the fall. These are, options that came out of that audit. The network update at WCHS, we've already talked about the high school network update. End user device replacements, we need to go through that at AE, Holly Hill, ME, and WT next year. And then we have to start looking at a multi-year phased-in classroom tech replacement plan. So if we don't start that process soon and then plan it over multi-years, it'll be a very large price tag all at the same time. Network update at the middle school, AE and WT coming in 25 and 26. So as I said, when we start looking at updating a building that is as old as the middle school, that becomes more costly than updating, say, our high school. Because our high school is built with all open pathways, all of these very easy pullways for cable and all of that, and it becomes much more cost effective. In the middle school, there's all kinds of warrens and twists and turns. We need more of it because the building, just the way it's built, it kind of blocks wireless in a lot of cases, and so it becomes very challenging to rewire and outfit that building. And then here in 25, 26, we have to be looking at the end of 25, 26, we have to look at our district fiber plan. So those are kinds of the things that we are really focused on over the next several years. Of course, we have a plan that goes on another 2, 3, 4 years out from that because this stuff always keeps getting older. It always keeps rolling. There's this rolling replacement life cycle so that we can stay ahead of the curve and continue to teach kids. I know that was fast. Questions?
Thanks, Larry, Chuck, Mark, everyone. As we sum this up, kind of goes back to what Mr. Patton says, well, what do we do now? Where are we going? I think we go back to what we talked about. Aging buildings, increased enrollment, modern experience for our students. These are all things that we want. And so as we move forward, Mrs. Adams had saw this previously and knew this was coming. And if you looked at the roadmap, these are the areas that we've already started to focus on. So in the beginning of this, we start talking about these issues. We start talking about the future. We can look at this and we can see a lot of red. We can see a lot of problems. We can see a lot of things. And it does make you a little bit nervous, but it also gives us an opportunity to really change this district as it did in 2010 with Amelia, as it did in 2017 at the new buildings, and then as we look for the future. So when we look at what we're going to be facing over the next 24, 36, 60 months, it's going to be a challenge for us. And so we're not going to eat the whole elephant at once. We're going to take a look at this. And so when you look at where we'll be going from here, and what I've been doing over the last 2 weeks is I've been diving into master facility plans in a lot of different districts. And so when we look at our district, our last master facility plan was back in 2016. And so when we start to look at, as we move forward, what we'll be challenged with is we start to develop that timeline, and we can be aggressive, but we also have to get the input. And one of the things about being transparent with our community, with our parents, is that we need the input from our community and parents as we go through this process. So the last one we did, again, was in 2016, and we're going to be moving forward with a timeline that you'll see in the fall as we start to work with it. Elevar is our design group, architects that we work with. We've already had 2 meetings with them to talk about the future, so that we can come to you as a board as we start to develop the options. And when you start to go through the timeline, there'll be options for you guys to look at. And we'll be preparing those for you based on our communication with our focus groups, with talking with parents, with our surveys, on exactly what does this community want as we move forward. You can't look at it as changing overnight, but we have to prepare for tomorrow. And so we have to look at what we're going to be looking at as we move forward. We have the building tours. Remember the building tours from our board meetings. And that's to highlight some of the great things that we have in our buildings and some of the challenges in our buildings. And so we'll be going on that tour throughout the year. So that will be a big part of it. We have to communicate with our community and with our parents about the challenges that we do have, because as you saw from the REACT survey, 80-20 doesn't really dictate what you just saw in the last slides. And that's the challenge that has had for us, and challenge as a board, and challenge as a district, is to let people know that these are the things that we want. We know our parents want our students in the best learning environment, a modern learning environment, and we're going to have to give those options to them as well. Our town halls will be focused on master facility planning, and listening again to stakeholder voice. Facility planning and a CAC, that will be part of it. We'll be meeting monthly, and Ellie will be leading that CAC, and part of that is going to be designing a modern environment for our students. It is a challenge that's going to be ahead of us. We're going to plan it, we're going to talk about it, and we can change the future of what this district looks like in our planning, because we know that this is going to be a need for us, and we want the best possible environment for our kids. Any questions?
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Mrs. Preston is going to come up next and speak about our key performance indicators. The board gave me a very clear direction when I got here to become nationally and state and locally recognized, being competitive in our academics and every other facet of our organization, to make sure that we were united as a community and we had school pride, that we were retaining and recruiting our staff in highly effective ways, and that we are creating the best experiences possible for our kids. And so we've established some key metrics that we look at. She shared with you in January kind of where we were mid-year, and is now here to celebrate our growth and our progress. So,
Thank you for that introduction. So as Mrs. Adams says, we have some key performance indicators in kind of broad categories that we believe, based on our district's theory of action, that if we can move the needle in positive ways in these key areas, we're going to get to that place that the board aspires for us to be, and that our community and our students deserve. So I'm going to kind of hit the highlights. Again, we're going to kind of get into a rhythm where kind of mid-year in January, and then again in June, we'll kind of give you an update on where we stand with those. I do want to point out that for a few of these metrics, the state, as part of the state's report card, releases like official numbers, and so I'll share more of that information with you in September after the report card has officially been released. But we're really excited and proud that we have kind of our own internal way of being able to gauge where we are with some of those key metrics, where in the past it would have been more difficult for us to really keep track of the impact of our work. And so, sorry, I'm already boring the group here. So we're really excited that we have an ability to share information with you about where we are based on our own internal data systems. So this first category that we look at is student engagement. And so we really want students to be deeply engaged in their learning, to have hope for their future, to feel a strong sense of belonging in school, to be able to engage in 21st century learning experiences. And so we have two metrics right now that we use to measure our levels of student engagement across the district. One of those comes from a survey tool that we use through a company called Battelle for Kids, and that's called the Student Experience 21. And this year, in total, over the course of the year, we had almost 15,000 responses. So students, sometimes it was like a pre and post. They may have taken it at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, or at the beginning of a unit, the end of a unit. And we were really trying to gauge whether instructional design, intentional priorities that the teacher placed on building relationships with students, or providing opportunities for students to have deep learning experiences, whether those things impacted how a student reported how they felt about coming to school and their levels of engagement. And so you'll see here, and in many ways, this is very similar to where our data was at the middle of the year. And so even across like almost 15,000 responses, we were right around almost a mean of 4 on a scale of 5 as for each of these categories. Digging a little deeper, you can see the top are those items that we had. We showed the greatest level of, like the highest level of score, and on the bottom those that the mean was kind of the lowest response across the board. And so things like students feeling like they have a good friend in school, that teachers believe that they can learn, that they're treated fairly, that they feel safe, all of those things are some of our highest level responses from students. Some of the areas where we see the most opportunity for growth are students receiving specific praise from their teacher over the last week or so, that the class makes them excited for their future, that they look forward to coming to class every day, and that they have choices in the way they learn. And so this information helps us like set up on a path, and it's information that the teachers are able then to use and to reflect on their own practices as they continue to seek ways to increase student engagement in school. And so we'll continue to expand the teachers and students who are using this so that we can continue to have a broader range of understanding of student engagement. Our second way that we're measuring student engagement across our system is through instructional rounds data. And so you've heard us talk about this in the past, that every Wednesday, all building principals, district office administrators, we come together to just spend time in classrooms. And it really helps us to continue to understand the strengths of the instruction that's happening, and helps us to calibrate, to be able to strengthen the kind of feedback that we can offer to teachers, to continue to enhance the instruction that's happening across our classrooms. And so as part of that, we have a tool that we use, and as part of each of those walkthroughs, we'll collect data on just the levels of student engagement that were present in that classroom on that given day. And so you can kind of see like the definition, our operating definition for student engagement is really looking at a student's readiness to learn based on their emotional like readiness, their social and their intellectual curiosity, and their participation or desire to learn more. And so those things are not exactly quantifiable. They're maybe a bit more qualitative than quantitative, but we're taking our observations and kind of turning it into a metric. And so on a scale of 0 to 4 across 951 classroom visits this year where we used our data collection tool, our mean score was a 2.76. And so for sure, we want to continue to see our levels of student engagement increase. And this kind of shows us where we were across the entire school year. Attendance is another metric that we use. And again, this is one of those where the state will kind of give us our official attendance numbers as part of our report card measure later on. Last year's report card, our attendance was a 90.3%, and we believe that we ended the year around the same place, based on, again, on our internal. Where we did see a lot of improvement, we believe, came in a decrease in our chronic absenteeism. And this was really a focus that that Eric Duell, he really led building principals and their teams through kind of a study, a problem of practice around decreasing chronic absenteeism. What were some specific strategies and action steps we could do to lessen the percentage of students who are missing more than 10% of school? That's kind of like the definition of chronically absent, where you come to school less than 90% of the time. And so last year, the report card measure was that we had 30% of our students chronically absent. So 1 in every 3 almost missing more than 10% of school. And so we believe that we've been able to fairly significantly decrease that number to around 24%. That's still more than what we are interested in seeing for sure, but we believe that our efforts are moving us in the right direction. You can see, a breakdown of the various categories of students and what their levels of chronic absenteeism were like here as well. Our next measure is related to discipline. And this is like a snapshot of our discipline dashboard that shows all incidences across all grade levels all year long. And so there were just over 8,000 total incidences reported across the system this year. When I look at this dashboard, a few things stand out to me that our building teams will continue to dig harder on. So if you notice, like economically disadvantaged, for example, over half of the incidents were students who are economically disadvantaged. 20% of those students with disabilities. And the breakdown of female to male there were some disproportionality that existed there. And so the data itself tells us something, but our ability to kind of dig deeper and try to understand some of the root causes, because we really want to ensure all students have an opportunity to fully participate in learning. And I think that this just gives us some questions, more questions to ask. It doesn't tell us all the answers and like what to do next, but it does help, I think, help us to pull back some other areas that we may need to address and look at further in the future.
I feel like it's one of those, that data will end up in your purpose and design meetings at the CAC. What is the purpose and design of school? And when we talk about all these additional services that people need to cut down barriers, like, is there a connection?
Yeah, absolutely. You then can see the breakdown across grade levels. I don't think it's any surprise that our highest number of incidents come from our middle school and then our 9th grade. So again, that sort of poses some questions around what is it about the developmental needs of middle school and early high school students, and what might be some of the other factors coming from things that we've heard shared earlier today that may be impacting this data. Some of the highlights, we did see a little bit over 7% decrease from the first semester to second semester as it related to the total number of incidents. 8th and 9th grade, like I said, they have the highest number of incidents, but 8th grade during the second semester, they saw a 32% decrease from first to second semester, and so that was definitely trending in the right direction. And overall, the middle school dropped 17% from first semester to second semester. Clearly, we had like a new administrative team this year, and so oftentimes with that comes kind of a new renewed sense of needing to establish expectations and ensure that everyone understands appropriate ways to behave and not. And so I think that much of that may be attributed to that, but it was great to see decreases from first to second. Interestingly enough, almost 20% of incidences across the elementary and middle school occurred on the bus. And so one of the things that came as a recommendation out of this year's CAC was related, as it related to wellness and safety for students, was really ensuring that all of our bus drivers really understood ways to help build relationships with students. There's something as part of our CPI training that can really help equip them with some strategies for de-escalation, for again, just kind of building positive relationships with students, ensuring that they understand our approach to positive behavior interventions and supports. And so it's an action step that we've put in place for next school year that all of our bus drivers in August, as part of our pre-service preschool in-service, will receive that training. And so we're really looking forward to that, and it will be interesting to see whether we see the impact of that in our data next year as well. So then we move to some of our academic measures. One of them is related to early literacy and to literacy in general. So this is looking across grades K to 5 and using a measure from Acadians, which is a predictor of future literacy success. And so looking at those students who were at or above benchmark from fall to spring. And you can see, again, our goal here is, ultimately our goal is 100%. 80% is kind of like that initial threshold for, that represents kind of a solid core instruction. And so we've made progress. We're not where we want to be. And this year we look forward to an ELA course of study where we're really going to be able to continue to dig deeper and to put some supports in place for teachers and students. First grade is really that place where we really want all of our students reading before they leave first grade. And so at the beginning of the year, we had just under 48% of students considered on track, and by the spring, just under 58%. The measures change, and so we've been working really diligently with our elementary principals, and they've been working diligently with their first grade teams to really help them understand we can't wait to get kids in connected text and reading. And so we're proud of the progress that we've made, and we still know that we're nowhere near at a place where we're ready to get out the champagne and the confetti and have that level of celebration going on. So our other academic measure that we look at comes from iReady. And so just if you're looking graphically, at the graph, fall reading to spring reading, they're above one another, and then fall to spring math. What we want to see is growth in the green, growing our green and shrinking our red. And so without getting too much more technical than that, that's really what you see here in these graphs, that we've really been able to significantly grow our green and shrink our red, with green representing at or above grade level, and red representing more than 2 grade levels below. And so you can just see from the visual that we're moving well on our way to doing that. In reading, this is a growth. Ultimately, we want to be in the top right quadrant here. The top right quadrant represents high levels of achievement and high levels of growth. And so you'll see many of our schools are actually in that top right quadrant as measured by the iReady assessment. All buildings, all elementary schools and the middle school were in that exceeding expected growth. Some are still in the lower performance range, and then others are in the high performance as well. And so like I said, our goal is to continue to grow that top right quadrant. And then as it relates to math, we just had one building that didn't exceed expected growth. All of our others did. And again, we've got, we're continuing to creep up to that top right quadrant for many of our schools. Third grade, first grade, third grade is another grade level where we really consider it a benchmark key kind of metric. So this was in the fall, our ELA third grade state test data. We had about 37% of students in the fall who had already met proficiency for that end of year exam. We believe right now, and this is like very preliminary still, so it still can change slightly, but we're right around 66%, which is a significant increase from last year. Again, not where we want to be fully, but moving in the right direction. Those colors represent red, again, like always sort of being like a stop sign, not exactly where you want to be, all the way up to proficiency and beyond with the green and blue colors. So when we look across third, fifth, and eighth grade, in January I shared with you what our projections were if students on the iReady assessment, if they met either their typical growth or their stretch growth goal, what their projection was for how they would perform on the Ohio State assessment. So what you can see here now is, and what their percentage was in the spring of 2022. So what you'll find here is now in the spring of 23, what we believe is a fairly close estimation of what their OST score will be from the spring. And so really, with the exception of fifth grade, everyone, and in many cases, significantly outpaced their score from last spring. And then you can see how that compares to the state average as well. So again, in September, I'll be able to share those actuals with you, but this is what we believe to be pretty close. Our other measure of academic performance is looking at the percentage of students who, at the end of their ninth grade year, are on track and on track to graduate on time. And one of the measures that we're using to determine on track is students who have earned at least 5 credits. And if they were able to keep that up over each of the 4 years, they would have met, the number of credits that they need. So 85% of all freshmen earned at least 5 credits this year. 76% of those earned a full credit in each of the 4 core. So while I'm excited to see 85%, not all of those 85% ended up with like 1.0 in English, math, science, and social studies. So some of those other credits came from elective credit, which is important as part of graduation, but it's going to mean that there needs to be some kind of credit recovery occurring for those students. And so our goal really is to have 100% of our freshmen on track by the end of ninth grade. So this kind of shows us where we are currently. So we're still going to keep working on some operational excellence measures. Some of what you heard today from our operations team, I think could become part of some metrics that we would look at in the future. I know that when Mark shared, he was talking about work orders, and the middle school, for example, being a building that has the greatest number of work orders happening. I think there are some things related to that, both from maintenance technology that we could do a better job of being able to share as a function of the health of our system. But we're getting there. I do know that as it relates to finances, clearly our 5-year forecast and us like operating within our 5-year forecast and our budget is really important. I do think it's important also to share that it has been the case that in the past, as a district, we were spending the bottom 6% now, and I made sure to get the latest numbers from Dan. We're in the bottom 20%, essentially, 20.75% of spending, and we really believe that we're proud of the fact that we used our ESSER funds and other sources to really make investments in our students and in our staff. And clearly we're still we're nowhere near the top, and really even nowhere near the middle. But we have been able to see that needle move a bit as it relates to our spending, and primarily even on instructional spending and support services for students. And then our last measure is related to high performance culture and team. And so in the fall, or in January, we were talking about how we intended to give a Gallup survey called the Q12 in February, and so we did that. And I know that David and Randy have already shared this data with you, but this is one of our metrics that we're really looking at to be able to understand kind of where our staff, both certified and classified staff, fall in terms of their levels of engagement. While it's important for us to understand student engagement, it's really also critically important for us to understand staff engagement. And so you can see here across all employees, 43% of our staff were considered engaged, 48% not engaged, and 9% actively disengaged. And you can see kind of at the top what is considered a world-class organization. So that's that top left with 67%, 26%, and 7%. So as we look at our actively disengaged, we're pretty close to some of those world-class numbers. What we really want to do is find ways to continue to take those staff members who are currently reporting not being engaged and moving those to engaged and actively engaged. And so there have been lots of action steps that have already happened since February related to that, and so we're really excited to continue to gauge our staff engagement levels using this tool. And then partnerships. So this is also something that I think we'll continue to have other ways to measure. But we've seen increases really in all of these from first semester to second semester. We have 78 students who participated in internships, 175 career-based students participating in career-based learning experiences second semester. We have more partners and more educators using Community Share, which is that tool that offers kind of a handshake between what teachers and students need and what businesses need, and can help link those connections together to support deepening learning experiences. And we've continued to expand groups like our Whole Child Network, our safety committee, really strengthening the work of that team, continuing to work with the foundation and our business advisory council. And so that's kind of like a high-level overview of where we are. We're really proud of the impacts that we've been able to make really across the board in each of these areas, and we look forward to continuing that as we move forward. Any questions? Did y'all take notes for, the last, there's a quiz. Did Natasha tell you she's going to give you a quiz here at the end?
You should see all the notes I've taken.
I'm sure you have.
Looks like we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, we are. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, and if you'll get up that presentation.
Got it.
As Dan is getting up this next slide deck, what we want to do is take a moment to highlight all of our retirees for the 2023 school year. Jim is always really good about shouting out his friends and colleagues that he's worked with for the years as they come up. And what we do as a staff to celebrate our retirees is Dr. Gary Brooks, a former superintendent of West Clermont. He paints a watercolor picture of a school or some kind of building in Clermont County as a gift. And so we have those matted and framed, and we take them out to each of the schools to celebrate the retirees. We bring some snacks and spend time roasting and toasting the retirees and celebrating them as our final farewell on behalf of the board and all of the administration. And so this year, the one thing, you can go ahead and start going through the list. You can see everyone getting their pictures from Dr. Brooks. And the one thing that came out over and over again when they talked about their experiences, a lot of these teachers talked about how they started in the school district as a substitute. And it was getting their feet wet as a substitute that led to their permanent positions here, and how we were contrasting just how today is different, where we have shortages of substitutes as well as teaching staff, and we wish that were the case. We wish that people were getting their foot wet and that there was that kind of demand. And so we're in a different era and needing to do things differently. But we are so proud and thankful for these staff who've dedicated so many years to West Clermont, and just thankful for Jeffrey putting this together so we could put a name with a face and let you guys kind of join us in the celebrations. Look how happy all the retirees are. They had the best end of year. They had the biggest smiles. Them and the seniors, of course. We always know in education, you never really replace what each individual human brings to the table. We certainly will put in new people in their positions, but you really can't replace what they uniquely bring to our school district. We are just so thankful for all of their efforts and what they have meant to the thousands and thousands of children that they have impacted over time. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. And just two other highlights. Just again, thanks everybody for coming out for graduation. I know we missed you that night, Mr. Rudy, but it was an amazing graduation at Centos. They did such a fabulous job and so fun to celebrate those kids. And just stay tuned. In everyone's mailboxes coming soon will be a paper newsletter. We're starting a new thing in the district. We're moving away from the electronic newsletters into a paper newsletter that will go into everyone's mailbox. We will highlight the reports that were shared tonight and what were shared in the November board meeting, or not November, sorry, in the May board meeting about facilities and finances and enrollment so that our community is very aware. We also are highlighting special events that happen in all the school buildings at the end of the school year, and of course, our amazing 2023 graduating class. So that'll be coming out very soon, and with that, that's all I have. Do you guys have questions for me? Okay, that's all I got.
Okay, so to get out at the right time, I think I got about 10 minutes. There's three action items that I have. They're really kind of the end of the year and the beginning of the year cleanups to do. The first is item 9.01, which is advances and transfers for fiscal year 23. Advances are basically temporary loans from the general fund to other funds that we have. Years back, both the state and federal, where they used to give us the money up front to spend, basically say, hey, you spend the money first, and then go seek reimbursement from the state or federal for the grants, for most of the grants that we have. So the advances are temporary loans over the end of the year to be paid back when we do the cash requests. In the resolution that I have and in the listing that I have, since it's early in the month, we still have cash requests going to the state and federal. I don't know if we'll get those before June 30th or not, but you'll see that there's a significant dollar amount going. It probably will not be that total dollar amount. It will be less than that, but because I need that authorization to advance funds to those programs, that's the listing that is there. The transfers that are listed are just one-way transactions where the general fund is subsidizing those funds. The two of those that are listed are the athletic funds that we do every year for the middle school and for the high school. We do all the expenses for those programs out of the 300 funds, out of the student activity or the district managed funds, and so you'll see those dollar amounts there. I think it's 100 and some thousand for the middle school, 400 some odd thousand dollars for the high school. That is typical of what we do as we go forward. So the item number 9.01 is a recommendation to approve the FY23 advances and transfers as listed.
Motion. Heard the recommendation. I'll put that on the floor in the form of a motion. Ask for a second.
I'll second it.
Any questions? Mr. Amon?
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
3 yes. Item 9.02 is the amending and supplementing the annual appropriations measure. We started out with a temporary last June for fiscal year '23. We did an annual appropriation measure in September. We amended that both in November and April as we get new programs to come about. This resolution is to kind of bring things right in line to where we are towards the end of the year. The important thing is with the general fund, although it looks like we're increasing it, that is just being increased for the advances and transfers. So we are within the original budget that we set out at the beginning of the year, so that's important to note there. The other amendments that are listed are really for the school accounts, the student activity accounts, and for the state and federal grants as money comes in and out. So item 9.02 is a recommendation to approve the resolutions for supplementing and amending the annual appropriations for fiscal year 22-23.
You've heard the recommendation. May I ask for a motion?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Any questions? All right, Mr. Moore.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
3 yes. Thank you. And then, so as we start fiscal year '24, the 23-24 year, we started off with a temporary appropriation measure. We do a temporary appropriation because the, historically, there's a tax budget that is submitted through the county that has been waived. And so we begin the year with a temporary appropriation measure that's about 75% of what we expect it to be. That is really our beginning authorization so that as of July 1, we can start spending money, do all the construction projects that Mr. LaFada has going on, and make sure we continue to pay the staff that we have. So item 9.03 is request for authorization for the temporary annual appropriation measure for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 23 through June 30th of 24.
You've heard the recommendation. May I ask for a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Any questions? Mr. Lamont?
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
3 yes. And so I have a decision whether I should just take the next 5 minutes, and ramble on, or cut those things short, but I'll just do 2 things with the time that I have. One is, there's a lot of data information that you received this evening, and I think that the thing that I would encourage you, if people were out, because it was a, virtual meeting, they're gonna have questions of you. But if you have questions of any of, of the superintendent and myself, please just make sure you ask those so that you can provide the proper response to people out in the community. Second thing is just compliments to Mr. LaFada, because it was about 2 years ago that I was asking, where's our building and facility condition and utilization report? And there wasn't one that really existed. It did not exist. So the report that they gave you this evening, it does take a lot of work to put that whole thing together. And not just Mr. LaFada, but his staff going through the buildings and the building principals to do that. It's not an easy report to do, but you can't move forward with your facilities until you have a report like that that is done. So compliments to Chuck and his people for doing that. If there was a third thing, and I won't take the whole 5 minutes. And the third thing is, Mark mentioned through his comments about people out there doing magic. That is true. If you think about the conditions that, with some of the building, there is a lot of magic that goes on to keep them. I think the phrase is the buildings and what we need to provide to them is a safe and supportive learning environment, and that's what they do. But also, on the other hand, is that we have, staff inside those classrooms, the teachers and the support staff, because of those conditions that exist, that also create a lot of magic too. So I don't think we can forget about everybody else that really makes magic go on with it. And one of the things we wanted to make sure is that the magic isn't an illusion, that it is real, and I think that's what Ellie was coming back with. Here's our measure, here's how we're gonna measure ourselves to make sure that we are there. And so I have approximately 3 minutes left before 9, and I'll waive that and go to our next board meeting, which is July.
Well, we have board comments.
Oh, board comments.
So
Sorry, I
let's see
don't
how
want-
they can do.
You have 3 minutes.
Yes.
You used up most of our time. Item 10, board visits. Wanna start with it?
I will keep mine very brief. Speaking of magic, Mark has taken my money and made it disappear, and I've yet to get that money back, Mark. No, today's information is a lot of information on these types of meetings with trying to get all this information and to figure out what is best for the community, what the community is wanting us to do, and then what direction they want us to move. And so there's just a lot of information on these days, but I absolutely appreciate it and trying to take it all in. So I do appreciate all the information.
Lot to take in.
Yep. Yeah, all the doom and gloom wasn't coming from you tonight. I appreciate all the time and energy you guys put in that. You guys bring a lot when you present these reports and presentations, and I appreciate that. I wish our community was in this room to hear it as well, because like you guys said, they see the shiny car. They don't get to pop the hood and see what's inside, so. And I think that's up to us to be advocates for that, so. Yeah, I'd like to congratulate those retiring. I've had Mrs. Blatt, my first grader this year, and she's been a huge blessing, so she will be missed, and I'm sure they all will. And, yeah, we're gonna be a city of champions soon. We got 3 teams. We're gonna have the Reds, FC Cincinnati, and our Bengals. They're all gonna win this year, so
Yeah.
got a lot of celebrating to prepare for. And I want to congratulate our students. Yeah, that was a great evening 2.5 weeks ago, and yeah, it was fun celebrating with them. When's our next meeting?
In July.
July 6th,
July 6th.
Thursday.
Yeah, it's a Thursday, which is, we're off our schedule a
Thursday.
little bit.
All right, well, look forward to joining you then. Ask for a motion to adjourn. So moved.
I'll second it.
All right, Mr. Amano.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Patton?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
3 yes.
Y'all have a good night.
Thank you.